Call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for January 5th, 2022. Roll call.
Harrell.
Can't work through Zoom.
Okay, everybody on mute that needs to be on.
Here. Budke.
Here.
Kuhn. Lunsky.
Here.
Matichek. Is he on? Reichert.
Here.
Sandy. Here. Schumacher. He was supposed to.
Going to come.
Yeah. And Wasserman.
Here. And
Okay. We have
Mr. Kuhn is on also.
and Frank.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're having a bit of a problem getting the camera moving here.
We have a quorum.
Mr. Matichek, can you unmute and say something so we can hear you're on? I thought we were done with this Zoom thing. Okay, well, I don't, it might be a different Frank, I can't. We'll see. Okay. With that, reading and approval of the minutes from the December 1st, 2021 meeting. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Second.
Second by Ms. Sandy. Discussion. Don't see any hands or any callbacks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Meeting minutes are submitted as, approved as submitted. Public hearings, final approvals, petitions, and minor changes, 3-1.
Item 3-1, replat of West Elementary re-subdivision located at the corner of 6th Avenue North and North 25th Street.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. So I'll quickly kind of show you where we're going to be at. We're on North Columbia Road. Here's 6th Avenue on the south side. Oh,
Is there any way of leaving the people on my screen?
no. Well, I'll have to share and then take
Okay.
it away again.
It just, yeah, so I could see hands
Yeah.
up and stuff.
So hopefully everybody can see that out there as well. So I'll go through it again. So Columbia Road's here. Here's 6th Avenue. Here's North 25th Street. It's the old West School site. I'll stop sharing and then reshare the correct new piece that I want to put up.
Okay. Just gonna try to run the public hearing off of this. I don't.
So we'll see how bad I botched this now.
Don't let it be. I was waiting for you.
Looks like I still got it. So North 25th Street here, this is the plat as it sits, and it's overlaid with the aerial just to kind of help everybody understand where we're at. 6th Avenue again down here, the alley on this side. There's 11 single-family lots that they've platted this out to. And since it's kind of hard to talk about the plat without talking about the zoning as well, I'll kind of intermingle that if that's okay. The lot size are obviously a little bit smaller in our R1 currently. It does talk about 60-foot minimums. They're going to be smaller. And for the most part, we've done this many times down in the south end. I've gone down to 38. It might be something that we want to look at in the future, that our R1s shouldn't be limited to 60-foot minimums. But with the plat, we're kind of understanding that we're already going a little bit smaller. And then that once the plat goes through, then those lots are kind of set up and going to be in place at that point. So from there, we're talking about R1s uses to follow. So that'd be single family uses. And so you would be limited to just one unit on each site. Kind of going back historically. So I've had a few questions from folks. How did we get here? There's been actually a few people that have asked me this. How do we get to have so many other spots within this area where there's multiple units? In about 2003, I don't know if anybody here other than maybe Frank was on the planning commission at the time, but there was something called university rezoning that went through. It was everything west of North 20th Street to Columbia Road. That whole area was an R2 area. There's a few pockets of some fourplexes that were R3 or R4 in there, but for the single-family homes, they were all R2s, which is an allowable use, but what we were seeing was a lot of conversions. So homes that were being converted to 2 units, single-family homes. So we were losing a lot of entry-level houses in that neighborhood, and the neighborhood kind of came to the city and said, we want to have that rezoned, we don't want to see any more conversions, and we want to stop that. So that was, as I understand it, the main purpose at that time. I wasn't here at that time, didn't know everything that went into it, but I know there was a lot of meetings, and we were trying to get that stock to stop turning over, stop getting that converted, and to cut down on the number of rentals in the area. And so that whole area was a mass rezoning to R1. And so since then, that has stopped to the conversions into 2-family. There's a lot of legal nonconformings that were in place ahead of time. They have rental licenses that are already in existence, and our building inspections program goes through that. But just to kind of give you a heads up that that's why there's a lot of existing 2 unit dwellings in the neighborhood. It kind of stemmed from the zoning being appropriate at that time or allowed that use to occur. So with that, today on this West School site, that wasn't even envisioned at that time. The zoning here, we're looking at continuing with the R1. That's what I told even the developers before they purchased. I said, you know, the intent was to stay with R1. They've let us know that they did want to follow that. Then this is the plan that they've come up with. So that's how we got to the 11 single-family lots. I know that there was another bid that was received, and I think that developer had talked about the potential of maybe asking for the city to change zoning to put up multifamily. So
Okay.
with that, that's a long story. But I know the developer's here. He certainly can go through a presentation again, hitting along a lot of the same notes that we had last time. So if you have any other questions for me, I can certainly answer them. Otherwise, I'll share the PowerPoint.
I think we've hashed this one. I guess at this point, if everybody's okay, I'll open a public hearing. Anybody in the audience, I'll do the best I can to catch anybody on Zoom would like to speak on item 3.1. Please do so at this time.
I do know there's at least one on Zoom.
Anybody in the audience here? I don't see anybody. I'll call you guys if we need you. Zoom people? World?
And maybe she didn't have any questions, and maybe she just wanted to take part. But Amanda, if you're on for this, you would need to take yourself off mute.
Yep, just remove yourself from mute, otherwise we're going to move on.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. For that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Ms. Sandy. Discussion, Mr. Budke?
Thank you. I had a couple questions. So I listened back to the council meeting from last month, right, where this was also discussed. And so it shows up in the staff report too. There's like 5 or 6 items, right, that were brought up. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, has there been progress? I'm just kind of curious what the update is on, you know, these things that were brought up about price point, about sweat equity, incentive programs. Where's all of that at?
So we'll be providing that. Right now, I don't think they've done full design, as I understand it. And well, maybe I'll let, did you guys want to answer that, Adam? I don't know if you guys have done design at least.
Oh, is that something, hold on. Is that something that we can force somebody to do? Or are we just requesting? I don't know where it came from. City council, you said, I watched that too, and I kind of misunderstood that a little bit, so I just want to get my head clear before we start bringing people up.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that in terms of building new, I'm guessing it's going to be 400,000 in terms of a house. I mean, it's kind of hard to build underneath that. But when I asked the question of whether they plan on doing a a basement. I don't know if they've even decided whether they're gonna have basements yet, so.
But is that something that has anything to do with zoning? Where
We
we're fitting
could
in?
restrict that under PUD. I've never seen us do that.
Okay, I just want to see what we're doing here. I'm being careful with this one, a little bit. Yeah, because I don't want to start telling, once we zone something, the developers have to build it within the zone, or the zoning that's there. I don't want to start restricting developers on telling them what they have to do to get the prices, so this person or this person can buy the house. Yeah, I'd love it to be my business, but it's not, the way I feel. Maybe I'm wrong.
The one item I will bring up, now, number 5 on the list that I provided was directly, could the city restrict the percentage of rental? I've already talked with folks, it does sound an awful lot like a taking. I've talked, and I did reach out to, as you guys remember, we had the High Plains Fair Housing Group. I talked with them, and I think they're going to provide us something soon. They were along the same lines as us, that's probably not a great idea. You're restricting the type of housing. So once I get that, I will forward that out to everybody. I think they were going to put together some thoughts on that as well. But from my perspective, I don't think it's a good idea for us to restrict zoning anywhere in town. So in terms of restricting the number of rentals, and you know, whether that number is 50% of the neighborhood, I just think that there's rules that we put into place and we can enforce those rules. But in terms of limiting the number of houses within a neighborhood to 50%, it's going to be very difficult not only to enforce that, but it is thought to be that if somebody lives in a house, it's going to be a taking. If they're living there today, but let's say they moved out of, you know, their place of work or retirement or something takes them out of the community, they're not able to sell their home. A lot of people want to have that option of renting, and we would potentially take that off the table. That's just one example, but there's probably many others that I just don't think it's a good idea, and I think the courts probably wouldn't support us. We have looked in and found some other areas that I just don't think have been challenged yet, but there are some cities that have looked at doing this, and I think they're probably just ripe to be overturned by the courts and potentially a liability to the city.
Doing this meaning, which of the things exactly? Just a cap on the number of
Cap
rentals?
on the number of rentals, whether it be 50% or 20% of a neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah, so during that discussion, right, like there was a few things that were brought forward. It sounded like from constituents, right?
Well, from council, there's a couple of council people that were asking questions. You're talking about
Right.
the list that was in the
Right,
in the
right,
staff
which
report.
sort of stem from concerns that they had, right? Just about the neighborhood more generally, right, and what the development we're talking about means for that. So it sounded like there was, the big one obviously is like the percentage of rentals to owner occupied. But they also talked about off-street parking, right, being difficult. That's something that comes up often in these meetings. And then about the affordability.
The affordability was discussed in terms of some of the things that we've hit on, yeah.
Right, right. And so then that's where this list of, 5 or 6, like, where is it that there's, some of these things are just out of the control of what we here as like a local community can do, but some of them we do control, and what can we actually affect to address those issues? So, I mean, I talked last time about like the alleyway, right? Having listened back to that discussion at the council meeting, and with these concerns from the neighborhood in mind, I'm not convinced that like this is going to like better any of those issues, right? If you're talking about the percentage of rentals to owner occupied, the off-street parking being difficult, the affordability. If we're talking about $400,000 homes, like how does that address, how does this proposal address any of those things?
Well, you're asking the developer to solve the issue of affordability with his 11 lots?
That's what I'm
yeah.
thinking here. We're going off the wrong deep end, I think.
Okay, so,
We can't force them what to do, Mr. Buck. We can't.
fair enough. I just mean, at that last council meeting, right, there was a whole raft of things that were brought up, right, like ideas. Where can we like nibble away at these problems of percentage of owner occupied, affordability, like how can we do that? So it sounded like there was going to be an update at the next meeting. I know I'm curious about these things and how they affect our existing core neighborhoods.
Right. So, there is a program that we're looking at in terms of conversions of rented units into single-family home occupied. So there's a program being looked at. We're not going to have an answer even by next week on whether or not that program's in place and trying to find out, but we are looking into that, of finding out if, could money be set aside to do that, and what would that look like? And we're looking at utilizing, we are doing a university rezoning, through the community development department. We're looking at doing a university corridor, kind of the next step off of the university corridor study, and going forth and taking a look at some of those things. I won't have an answer even by next week on what that program could look like and what the parameters would be. I think that would whittle away it a little bit at bringing back. It would be the kind of the carrot option to kind of bring some back into home occupied units again, that were already converted. That's going to be a nibbling at the edge, if you will. It's a very small, but it's the carrot style in terms of what can we incent to help people to convert those back. That's just one example. Some of the other things that we talked about were enforcement and some of those things. But the other thing was in terms of the cost. I mean, yeah, I think the costs are going to be, once they get final design, we'll have an idea, but this is an area that they're going to be newer homes than anything else in that neighborhood, no matter what we do. And I was talking to Steve before, we do have an example of this being done. The Walchester area, about 15th and Walnut area.
Beautiful area. That turned out amazing.
Yeah, but they aren't, those houses were definitely a step up from what was already there. So we don't have a whole lot of people building, in the past anyway, on lots of this size. So we are going to have, in this case, the developers looking at smaller lots than what typically would be built even in that Walchester area. Those went 60 foot plus. We tried selling those at 50 foot and we couldn't get buyers at that time. It was a different time, 10, 15 years ago, but we had to go to 60 foot, 64 foot wide before we ended up selling those. And nobody used the alley. So those are things that were kind of new to us at that time, but it was something that we tried, and it was in an area that was similar to this in that it was a pocket of area that we were going to bring in new homes to.
It's the same thing. A lot of small single car garages in that area, a lot of small house, and then the newer ones came in and you had double and triple car garages, and I have friends that live in that area. It just works great. You look at it now and you don't even know what to say. It just kind of melted in. Are they renting them out or not? I don't know. Not my business.
Right, yeah.
How much do they cost? Guess what? Constructions went up a lot. I know that.
And there is a rental license program, so if anybody's going to rent a home, there's a rental license program that we go through, and that's done through our building inspections department, and they check on those yearly.
Okay, I did have another question for you about the zoning, right? Because you mentioned this 2003 a broad rezoning, like throughout the entire neighborhood. Everything is downzoned essentially.
Yes.
To R1.
From R2 to R1, yeah.
Right. So, okay, you said that stopped the conversions of like existing single-family home stock to like duplexes, right? Where that structure is like subdivided. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't have facts to back up that statement, but you would not have been able to any longer take a existing single-family home and take the basement, put a kitchen in, and make it, 2 different units.
Right, okay.
And then, which would make it eligible for 8 people to live there.
Right. So where I'm going with this is that downzoning, it didn't stop this trend of the balance of rental versus owner-occupied, right? There was, throughout all this time, since 20 years, right, there's been increasingly more and more of the rentals still. So like the zoning, just simply going from R2 to R1, like you say, like that doesn't affect the owner-occupied. So when we're talking about,
But it keeps the R2 from the duplexes to go to R1. It cuts that out, correct?
Yeah, you're gonna end up with
I mean,
less,
so that's a big step right there. I
Sure.
feel that the city has done on this one.
less density. Does that make sense?
Less density, yeah.
Yeah, you would end up with less multiple unit home, parcels out there.
so where I'm going with this, I'd emailed you about accessory dwellings, right? Because
Yeah.
very obviously, there is a demand for rental units in this neighborhood, right? Like it's been running that way for decades. How do you balance that with everything else we've been just talking about, right? Like the property rights, inspections, like how do you balance those? I feel like as part of this bigger, broader conversation and how we're gonna like nibble around this issue, I think that part of that should include accessory dwelling units, which is currently prohibited by the R1 zone. Is that?
Yeah, you could
accurate?
not do 2 units on an R1 lot.
Right. So what I mean by accessory dwelling unit is not subdividing up an existing structure, right? But like in the back, in the alley perhaps,
Fawns, where the fawns live.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you.
having a small rental, or it could be owned, right? But just another dwelling behind the primary structure. So by going down this route, when there's no alley, when there's R1, those tools that might be in the toolbox are off the table. So I want to put that out there that if, like, I know we're not going to solve this, it's not going to be solved tonight, there's no silver bullet, but if we're, like, if as a community we're serious about looking at these neighborhoods and how to meaningfully reinvest in them, how to hack away where we can at this big Gordian knot of owner occupancy and affordability, I don't think we should take an option like that off the table. So, there, thank you.
If I could just respond, my concern with doing that is what I've heard from most folks is they didn't want to go over these 11 units, is that I think you would open that up to potential of having 22 units in this neighborhood.
Right.
Somebody could rent out the main house and have that ADU then in the back as well.
Sure, but my point is that it gives, it's a different model for having owner-occupied, like the people that
Affordability
live there.
yeah.
And it addresses the affordability issue too, right? If you can have part of your property generating income for you.
Yeah, and I could see using those, I'm just not too sure this neighborhood's the right place for that. I know that would fill a role for some people that want to be close to the university. My concern is that you'd end up with additional units to rent in the same area, and you'd end up with more cars and those types of things that we're hearing more concerns from the neighborhood about that.
Okay, fair enough, but again, going back
I mean, I'm looking at it thinking, I could buy one of these then that you're talking about, and I can get 4 bedrooms, I can get 4 people in the main house, and I get 2 people in the smaller house. I own it, I get 6 rentals in off of this. Nothing's prohibiting me from doing that. Nothing's prohibiting me from doing that. And granted, there's a lot more me's out there that would jump on something like that. Me as an example. I didn't want to use anybody else but myself.
Right.
I'm scared you're going down a road that might backfire. I'm not a property manager, just a dumb contractor, but that's where I'm at.
I like the
That's
thought
what I'm
of
worried about,
discussion of
Mr.
ADUs.
Budke. I am if we do that.
I'm not sure here. That's my only
I
concern.
worry about that neighborhood especially would hold that rentability.
Okay, but what we're talking about here right now is, I think, like 4-bedroom homes at a price point that's $400,000, it sounds like, right? Not a starter home like the rest of the housing stock there. So, like, who?
A starter home would be a used one down the block.
Yeah.
That you can buy.
You can't build.
That I did.
Right. So,
build.
right, so like, here's the
Yeah.
scenario I'm imagining. You buy this starter home down the block that you can afford, right? And then the zone, and the plat and the zoning of that supports a scenario where you improve it, right? You put the accessory dwelling behind the primary house, right?
So you
And-
want to go back up to an R2 in this?
I'm not sure why it's an R2. I'm talking about just like an accessory dwelling where you can do a little bit more.
Why don't you just let them turn all these into duplexes? Just have it back to the way it was. Do R2s, have them all duplexes again. If you're looking for density, that is something we could do.
It's
We
not-
could actually change the zoning there.
The
And
density-
we could make everything an R2. No, just a second here. I mean, I'm confused on whether you're trying to make it more dense or less dense. If you're trying to make it more dense, all we have to do is change this to an R2, everybody can make duplexes. And let's not forget, we have 10,000 college students in this town that need a place to live.
Right.
Having them live by the university makes sense.
Yes.
Having them live in rentals makes sense.
Right.
And I've been hearing a lot of discussion about people saying we need to build affordable housing. You are not going to build $200,000 houses. If you look on Zillow, there are lots of houses under $150,000.
Right.
That's where I started, that's where everybody else here started buying. We didn't buy a brand new home when we moved to town. And then you work on it and you build it. So this idea of if we want to build affordable housing, build a condo. Build something that they can buy and get equity in that is extremely dense so that you can drop the price. Do ideas like that. You're not going to build single-family homes. You can't force them down to the number that you're looking for. And so I think, and especially in this neighborhood is so unique. And you've got to balance the fact that we need rentals,
Exactly.
but you also have to worry about the law of unintended consequences. You start pushing people out of here, then the value of these houses is going to go to nothing. You know, I mean, you have to be very careful with what you're trying to do here. And I guess I'm just a little confused is, if you want these accessory dwellings, you're talking about changing a lot of different things. If what you're really looking for, and things that we really would have a difficult time changing, but if you want to get serious about having more density in this area, I think you're going to have some real pushback from the people in the neighborhood who want to keep it as much single-family homes as they can. But if you want to do that, just let them put another kitchen in these and make them all duplexes, or let them put 6 unrelated people in a house together, or do something like that. Those are changes we can make, but, and I'm sorry to monopolize time here, but I think it's also way beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here. We're talking about an alley, you know, but if you want to have this discussion, I think there's a time, and maybe we should consider putting a group together to look at that, you know, to look at, do we want to make zoning changes or something? But that's not this project. This project is somebody who's trying to build 11 houses and trying to move forward with that.
Just one thing, then I'm really done. So you asked about the density. The density in my mind is not the point. Like it's not like density for density's sake. The idea of like some sort of accessory dwelling as an option is simply that you can remain in place and generate certain income, and that may be a way to balance what you pointed out.
I just don't get it, because now we just talked about not wanting to add extra cars, extra stuff to the neighborhood. All this is adding to that to try to get somebody in a house they can't afford, that they got to rent part of it out to be able to afford it. That's none of my business, but that's kind of what you know what I mean? We're really going out on a limb on that, because I go, if I was in that neighborhood, and I've got calls from people in that neighborhood. I have a couple friends who live right in this affected area that were so happy when they heard about the single families and not apartments, that they're ecstatic.
imagine like a apartment block, like a big.
Well, yeah, we said it last meeting, they could have done that. Nothing's stopping them from trying to rezone it. Miss Sandy?
I wonder if this is a conversation for some other time. I feel
Yeah.
like it isn't fair for us to have the developers sit through this conversation because they're not asking for accessory dwellings.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I've got
See
this
the other
one.
one.
This one was making no
No, I
weird
agree.
noise.
I agree.
So I think it'd be great if we could vote on this. I like what they're bringing forward. I think that we hear a lot about wanting single-family homes on the north end, and that's exactly what they're doing. We can't control what they price their house at. They didn't buy this under any special circumstances that they needed to provide low-income housing or affordable housing, or, I work in that world, and Alex is 100% right. First of all, everyone's idea of affordable is different, and you can't build affordable. Not to what was affordable when I was looking for my first house, 20 houses ago.
I just wanted to make sure that, we're catching Jenny, Pete, and Frank on the TV. Make sure they have anything to add or not, just so we don't lose them.
No, this is Jenny. I 100% agree with Megan and Alex. I think we've been sensitive all along, even prior to my being on the planning and zoning, is affordable, or not affordable housing, excuse me, single-family housing being replaced. They didn't want high density, and I do like the plan. I'm not sure that the accessory dwelling is for here, like Ryan said, so I'm in favor of the plan as it being stated here today.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see Pete or Frank raising their hand, or Frank kinda is. Are you wanting to talk, Frank, or no?
You're on mute.
You're on mute, Mr. Matichek. You're still on mute, Mr. Matichek. There you go.
How about now?
You're good.
Okay, I just think we should go ahead and vote on it. I think this is exactly what the neighborhood needs.
All right, I think with that, we're kind of rehashing. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. Item 3.2.
Ordinance to amend the zoning map to include West School Micro PUD planned unit development located at the corner of 6th Avenue and North 25th.
Mr. Brooks? is
I'll
there
only
anything-
note that last time I think we had that the sidewalk wasn't going to be along the west side. It's now that it will be. Other than that, nothing new.
Thank you. With this, there's a public hearing, so I will open up the public hearing. Anybody in the audience or on TV, try to do the best you can to speak to this issue. Not hearing or seeing anybody?
Oh, excuse me.
Was-
Excuse me?
Yeah, is that Miss Perry I see?
Yes.
Please-
I live at 6,
Please
pardon me?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Perry, 610 North 25th Street. And I do live right across the street from West. And I went to the developers meeting that they held for homeowners. And certainly, we are concerned about density in this area of town. And I think from the people that were at the meeting, I guess I can only speak for myself. I liked what the developers and Mr. Opp were presenting. And we certainly would like to have single-family homes in this neighborhood. Affordable housing, like they said, is everybody's perception is different. And in these economic times, building new homes probably are not affordable for a lot of people. But that's not the issue, I don't think. And I'm happy that this has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you with that. And not seeing anything else, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert?
Move approval.
Ms. Sandy? Okay, any further discussion? Not seeing any hands, I'll close that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item passes. 3-3.
Item 3-3, conditional use permit, Sharehouse Incorporated to operate a residential addiction recovery assistance facility at 1122 North 43rd Street.
Mrs. Halford.
Good evening. I'm just bringing it up on the map, so to give you guys a visual. Right, as well as it is in your packet. So the property we're looking at is 1122 North 43rd Street. It's the old Super 8 Hotel. So Sharehouse is looking to expand into the Grand Forks area. It's a residential addiction recovery assistance facility. They have a couple of facilities in Fargo, as well as our headquarters is located there. And they're looking at expanding here. We have a lot of community support on this project, and they're looking for a conditional use permit for this area. Staff has looked at this area. We feel that it fits the area and it's a good use of the property. And recommending approval. I can definitely answer any questions, as well as there are some reps on via Zoom too that can answer questions as well.
So with that, do we have any questions before we open the public hearing? Anyone? So I'll open the public hearing. Anybody who'd like to address item 3-3, please do so at this time. Seeing nobody in the audience, trying to see anybody on Zoom. Not seeing any hands. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Reichert?
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Reichert, second by Mr. Lunsky. Any further discussion? Mr. Matichek, I see your hand.
I think I know the answer to this question, but is there bus service there?
I would assume there's something close by within a half a mile, but I have not checked that.
Less than.
Oh, Ryan says there's less than.
There's no direct bus service right there?
He said along the university.
No, we're operating university busing.
Okay.
They are. Frank, city's area transit now operates the university bus system now as well. So that area is all linked in as I understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Thanks, Mr. Matichek. Does that answer your question, Frank?
Yeah, I'd like to see bus service there, but we can work on that later.
Okay.
Yep.
It'll be there, he said. Okay? So that, call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed to 3-3, same sign. 3-3 passes. Item 4, communication and preliminary approvals, nothing. Reports from the planning department, nothing.
I think just in your package, you'll notice the revised 2022 now. We did move that first meeting of July to the second week.
Nice. That was under other business. Your agenda, sir.
Thank you.
Got to get you. Okay, so that sounds good. Everybody sees that and can put those in your calendar for 22. With that, Mr. Reichert.
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Lunsky.
Second.
So moved. Meeting adjourned.